my first ceremony, I literally was in my mom's body experiencing what it was like to pick her child up from the police station. Someone recently said to me, to move slow is to move smooth, and to move smooth is to move fast.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Twenties Detox. I'm Bianca, your host, where we dive into all the things I'm learning and unlearning in my 20s to elevate this decade. This week, I have an incredible guest, Rachael Mrocka. She is so amazing, so intuitive, and all the lessons we dove into in this episode is really inspirational. To name a few things that Rachael does, Rachael is an intuitive coach, in training Reiki practitioner. She's a tarot reader, a healer, and also an insightful astrologer. Rachael connects aspects of spirituality and mental health to help guide people towards healing, finding inner peace, and increasing their self-awareness. I know that you guys are going to love this episode. I even got a little bit emotional, I'm not going to lie. And I just felt like it was a very healing conversation, especially if you're a woman and you've gone through any sort of negative experiences in your life and you have experienced shame. This will feel very liberating for you to listen to, so I really hope you enjoy it. Before we get into the episode, make sure to download and subscribe so that I know that you guys are enjoying this and I'll keep posting them. Well, welcome, Rachael Mrocka, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on here. Your energy online is... I was trying to write this down, and the only word I could think of was ethereal. There's some creators online where I feel like we were meant to connect because you can tell when a creator has a greater vision than just getting viral. Like, they have a deeper message to it, and I'm so blessed and happy for you to be on here and share all your wisdom because I know you went for a recent trip to Peru. And I would love to know how that went, all the learnings that you had and messages that you got from that experience. Like, I'd love to know, first thing you can think of, like, how did that change your life?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on because like you just said, that resonance with specific creators that are in it for the medicine of the messages that they're bringing. It just like, it makes me want to cry because just seeing where we are in terms of collective consciousness and seeing how consciousness is awakening all around the planet, like, it's an honor to be able to have a platform and to be able to speak on platforms and to see creators such as yourself as well that are clearly helping that collective wake up to the truth of who they are and what is and their own magic. It's all so aligned, and especially as we're entering like the age of Aquarius, this is all so divinely timed. So thank you for being a way shower and also having me on.
Of course.
Okay, so Peru, the first thing I can think of, honestly, was the fact that it really just busted my heart open in a completely different way. I like to think of myself as somebody that navigates life with an open heart, but so we sat in 3 ceremonies, which was really great because I honestly don't know if I would have gotten as much out of one ceremony. And there was a lot that went into my particular retreat that I realized was actually crucial. Just being surrounded in the culture, being from the place that the medicine was from, there's a lot of people that administer the medicine in places that are totally unrelated, only do one ceremony. Working with the shamans that I did when they were guiding us, like being in the height of those realms, I really realized like the importance of people knowing what they're doing because
Yeah.
these people have been connected to the medicine and the culture for thousands of years through their own lineages. So that really just made me feel so safe and nurtured because, again, when you're at the height of it, you're like, you need that guide, you need someone's voice, essentially. I almost had this really beautiful visual. If you've seen The Great Gatsby or read The Great Gatsby, they talk about this little green light at the other side of the lake. And that was what my shamans felt like to me in the midst of being in the ayahuasca realm. It is pretty much like mushrooms times 100.
Yeah.
The come down from it is like a mushroom trip, which is really, really intense.
Yeah.
So feeling those shamans and those people and the culture as that guiding light, I could not have imagined it in truly any other way. Um, but so ayahuasca is a grandmother spirit. So it works with the divine feminine, which, is nature, is Pachamama, is earth. And
Mm-hmm.
it really showed me a lot of compassion for the women in my family. I saw a lot of things, especially that have to do with my mom. So I was in a really toxic relationship that caused my mom to have to pick me up from the police station more than once. And my first ceremony, I literally was in my mom's body experiencing what it was like to pick her child up from the police station. And it was just busted my heart open because I've never, in the midst of going through your own stuff, you're aware of how your stuff could affect other people, but really feeling my mom's emotions, I was literally sitting here feeling like a failure as a mom. And it just made me want to hug her because I was just like, how do I tell her she didn't do anything wrong? Like, she couldn't have done any better
Mm.
to have prevented me from being in that space. Oof. And it
I'm
was so
already tearing
beautiful.
up. We just started.
Yeah, it was so beautiful just because I was like, that being my intro in. So it's actually quite funny. So ayahuasca first showed me that I need to drop my judgment because, and that's
Mm.
hard because I'm a Capricorn.
Oh, yeah.
Astrology brings the natural judgment, but it
Mm-hmm.
kind of showed me that's like essentially my final boss. Not that we have a final boss because life is about constant growth and expansion, but so ayahuasca, you take one cup and it takes about an hour to kick in. So in our first ceremony, I sat there for an hour in the space that's called the Maloka. So ceremony started about 7:30 p.m., worked until about 2:30 a.m., so it's a pretty long experience. And I had my first cup and I sat there waiting for it to kick in. Nothing. Nothing. I was sitting there and I was like, okay, I've heard a lot of stories about ayahuasca not wanting to work with people and just blacking people out, like literally no messages coming through. So I sat there and I was like, okay, I went through all the melodrama. Did I just spend all my money? Did I just fly 17 hours for nothing? Did I just like hype all of this up and save all this and whatever? I sat there really working through all that and I eventually just got to a place where I was like, okay, you know what? If this is what ayahuasca wants to show me, nothing, I have to accept that as the message, as the medicine. So
Mm-hmm.
about an hour and a half in, the shaman went around and was like, okay, if anybody feels called to taking a second cup, just go up to the maestro and take your second cup. So I was like, I gotta go for the second cup. Like, there's no way this is not gonna work.
Yeah.
So after the second cup, I like blasted out of whatever Maloka I was in. And
Yeah.
that just showed me because the other two ceremonies I was more able to feel my spiral into the realm, whereas the first one it was almost like both cups activated at once, so it was really like I just like woke up in a different dimension almost, and it was really overwhelming because I'd never been in that space before, so all of a sudden these things, hallucinogens, especially things like mushrooms and ayahuasca, we only use about 10% of our brains, right? So
Yeah.
when you are sitting with medicine like that, literally new synapses are firing in your brain that have never fired before, and you are picking up all your six senses, like they are rapid firing, and you are perceiving so much. It's like sensory overload. So I all of a sudden woke up in this realm and I was like, fuck, I gotta drop my judgment. I was like, that was it. I gotta drop my judgment because ayahuasca was like, yeah, you thought this wasn't gonna work? You thought this wasn't
You
gonna work?
thought.
You really thought. So
Yeah.
my first ceremony, I definitely, like, if I were to have blacked out for any of the ceremonies, it was probably that one. I remember like a few things, but it's really hard to integrate those experiences because you are receiving so much that when you come down into this denser 3D energy and you're like a normal human again, you're almost like, all right, what just happened? Your brain's like,
Yeah.
what did I just experience? But my first ceremony was really just compassion for my mom. I felt the weight of what women have to carry, which was pretty hard, and just since the beginning of time, like what
Yeah.
women have had to go through and all the baggage that we've carried and all the abuse that we've taken on so many different levels. for so long, but it really just being in the jungle as well, being in nature, being held by the feminine. It was almost like I was feeling the pain, but also I was being coddled and cared for and nurtured. And it was like, okay, seeing the bigger picture of like why the feminine had to be lessened in order to reclaim her power, and how all of us on an, oh, makes me emotional. All of us
I'm
on
getting so
an individual
emotional too.
level.
I'm like feeling all this.
Yeah, because
It's
it's things that we
amazing.
know, it's just like a remembrance, and that's why it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like it's not something new. It's like an activation of remembering, and that's what I truly believe, is the whole point of being here on Earth is like we forgot who we were to come here and remember. So that activation is just so beautiful to realize, like on an individual scale, the little things that we do, whether it's saying no to a man, saying no to anybody, taking care of ourselves in certain ways, chasing our dreams and doing what we want. Like we are really breaking these chains for women everywhere. Oof. And no matter if somebody's conscious or not, we are adding energy into that piggy bank that people always have the ability to tap into. So it's like we're helping heal that collective, whether they realize it or not. And because of a small step that you took today to take care of yourself, someone else around the world just felt a random passion to say no to somebody, or to chase after their own dreams, or to do whatever that they're not even picking up on, which was
Yeah.
so beautiful. So my first ceremony was like really about women, which was incredible.
That is so, like, thank you for sharing that because that is something that I have carried inside myself for like my whole life. And I had another friend of mine on in the last season, and she was talking about the divine feminine and masculine and how so many people are like viewing them differently than what their truth is.
Yeah.
And I always perceived myself as more of a masculine person, but as we spoke about it more and more and more, if I would label myself as an archetype, it would be the huntress. Like as a kid, my main sport was martial arts. So that's what I did for a majority of my life. And then I taught it, and I taught it to adults too. And there was always like a rage inside me. And more as I discovered what that could be, it became the feminine rage. And I noticed, like, I think I was, possibly born with this, like, sense of intensity around seeing how if like a woman is like even mistreated for a second, I've like blacked out of anger
Yeah.
and like put that person in their place. And it makes, and also I'm like Pisces, so I get like really emotional and I like cry and
That's
I get
also your Capricorn moon
so,
girl, because
and
mom's
Capricorn, like I get
Capricorn.
so like so much rage. And I've also witnessed just like the subtle put down of women, not just subtle even, in
Yeah, the
family.
subtleties
And
are huge and they're loud. Yeah.
yeah, and it fueled it. And I think it's a part of like why I'm on this planet, is like to give like women of every background and any experience like the chance to feel seen and feel powerful. That would be like my inner drive in life. I think it was that. And I like had that since I was like, I can't even remember how young. Like it just was like a knowing.
Yeah.
So you sharing that makes me very emotional and like also
Yeah.
so incredibly proud of you. Like I definitely had seen through like on TikTok, like that's how I originally found you. And I was
Oh
like,
God, was it like my
we're
crying on the kitchen floor days?
it was just like you showing like how so many women have gone through that. It
I was in
didn't
my
need to
Trisha
be to
Paytas
your,
moment, but I was like, you know what? It's real, and this is the stuff people are not talking about, because I'm tired of the love and light. Like we are a mess out here. We are a
you
mess
made
out
so many women feel seen,
here.
and it didn't even need to be to the severity that you were going through, or and even women that were farther along. Like that just made so many women feel seen. And you're so right about how we need to go through this destruction. We always talk about like you contract before you expand.
Yep.
And I think women, the divine feminine, have been really put down, contracting, and we're all feeling it who are tapped into spirituality or something deeper, that it's starting to expand. Like, we're starting to feel brave enough to speak our truth and actually show that, like, the divine feminine is so powerful. Like, without it, the divine masculine wouldn't be able to create incredible things. Like, we're the ones that, like, have that inner power to it. Not just woman, the divine feminine, which is in every single person, men included. And it's also being shown in men how they are also appearing more grounded and stepping away from toxic masculinity. So
Yeah, that was so
yeah,
beautiful
that
to
just
see.
hit
There
me.
was a few men on my retreat, and that was incredible to see because with working with ayahuasca being like the divine feminine spirit, it was so incredible to see them, one, just be vulnerable, two, to see how during our integration talks they were vocalizing like, "Oh, I don't know how to express myself. I need to tell the people that I care about I'm sorry. I need to tell so and so that I love them. I need to step up for the women in my life." It was really healing to see as well that there are men that want to do the work and
Yeah.
what they're doing. Because I feel like, obviously every small ripple makes big change eventually. But I think men right now, especially, have a even bigger opportunity. So, like, the ones that are waking up, like, I feel like they almost have a bigger door to make a bigger splash.
Oh,
So I feel like, the
absolutely.
divine feminine kind of feels like it's already like a few steps ahead. It's been that way. But I
Hmm.
feel like the masculine is like just starting to catch up as well. And something that you said too about feminine rage, something I've been really connecting with, is think about the element of earth, right? Like, think about the divine feminine. When earth is pissed, girl, tsunamis,
Have you been
hurricanes,
seeing things?
volcanoes,
I
like,
can't even believe you said that word.
hey, stop. Enough tagger triggers.
Yeah.
But when Earth is angry, like, she revolts. And that
Yeah.
weight is massive. So, like, because I feel the same way, and I've always held that sort of anger where I've genuinely questioned, like, do other people get this angry? Like, is really
Yeah.
is that possible?
Is it a me problem? Like, do I
Yeah, and
need
I've
to do
always
therapy the rest of my
perceived
life?
it. Yeah, and I've always
Mhm.
perceived it as that more masculine aspect as well. But something that I've really been sitting with as well is so I've been working with two medicines since I got back, Hape and Sanunga. So Hape is a tobacco snuff, and Sanunga is made from roots, but it's like eye drops that you put in your eyes that feel like pepper spray, but it's incredible. So both really ground you in your body. And some messages that I've really been sitting with from those two in ceremony is that the masculine is the generator and the feminine is the creator. And you can't have one without the other, where it's like, okay, I can't create without the ideas, and I don't have ideas unless I start doing some sort of creating. So it's kind of
Mhm.
this like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? But it almost feels like this
Right.
loop to me of like, I was sitting in meditation the other day and I felt my breath kind of like go down into earth, back up and around through like the sky, cosmos, and then come back down. And it was this sort of like circular motion of like, oh, this is how the divine feminine and masculine work in everybody, which is really incredible to sit with because I feel like you said, people kind of have a warped perception of like what either of those things are, especially I think with like content creators that are pushing views for like particular things and are trying to have like low key certain agendas. Like, I feel
Totally.
like a lot of people want to push
Yeah.
like, especially the word narcissist. People love to throw that around in terms of like
Yeah.
talking about the divine masculine and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like it kind of taints what that energy is. And it's like people don't want the masculine,
Yeah.
or like they sort of put one on a pedestal or compare the two, not processing that like you need both of those things and that they both, when balanced, work hand in hand, and that's how you truly become the creator of your experience versus just only identifying with one, which is not necessarily true.
No.
For real.
It goes to show, like, polarity. There's like um what's her name? Brittany Bento, I think. She's like an amazing creator on TikTok, and she like has these readings and messages and downloads, channeling messages. And she
Oh, I
had
think I know who you're
this,
talking about. I just saw like an image of her in my head.
yeah, I'll send it's
I feel like she's
I
always just like sitting on
love
her
her.
balcony being like crying.
Yeah,
Like, you're about to enter a really good period. I'm like, yes, claim.
I'm the same. I'm like, I've been
Claim.
waiting for this. Um, And she has a podcast as well. And there was one episode where she said that polarity is something we're just going to have to deal with being on this earth. Like if you look at our earth, there's a polarity,
It's all
North and
good.
South
Yeah.
Pole. There's the female, there's female women and men. And I truly think like as a way for humans to find balance, we need to experience both extremes before we find that balance. And I'm finding that for a long time we were in the masculine. Like that was the way society worked. And now we're opening up some of the dark sides about being too far on that end and possibly in the wounded masculine. So then as a natural way of like how humans process, we're like, okay, we're not going to have any of that. And eventually we're going to find, in this
That middle
extreme
space.
soft girl era and like maybe everybody just in their feminine, and how that doesn't serve us either. And then we find that balance. But I think it's necessary for us to experience both ends. I know I did. And then now I'm just slowly finding that balance.
Yeah, Abraham Hicks, if you're familiar with her work, but one thing that's always really stuck with me is the phrase, with contrast comes clarity. And it's like, you don't know, even in simplest terms, you don't even know what coffee you like until you realize what coffee you don't like. And
Exactly.
it's like, okay, that plays out in so many different realms of your life. Just when it comes to jobs, okay, relationships, how do I know what a good relationship is unless I date the person who can't communicate? And I'm like, oh, actually, I need somebody that can be a little bit more transparent. You need that.
Yes.
And I feel like that's something people are so quick to stick to the specifics of. And I'm guilty as charged. Like you said, it's like something that you need to go through in order to kind of process. But I think people sort of begin to identify specific people in their life, specific experiences with whatever side of polarity they're on. And then it's kind of writ off as good or bad. And I feel like that's where it gets dangerous, because it's like nothing is necessarily good or bad by nature. It just is.
Yeah,
So it's like,
exactly.
okay, you don't have to label things or put them in a box or say like, okay, this thing sucks because it didn't align for me. It's just kind of like, okay, well, me and that energy, two different puzzle pieces, and I'm gonna
Yeah,
go on to the next thing. And that's really hard,
exactly.
especially when you're like in the face of heartbreak and that's where your contrast is, or like things that are literally causing suffering in your life. It's easier said than done. But something I've really stuck with as well is I love Ram Dass. He is one of my guides. He came through a bunch on my ceremony, which was really crazy. And something that one of his main messages is definitely cultivating the space within you where you are the observer and you are sat in the witness, the place behind yourself that exists and can watch all of your melodrama play out. And I feel like that's kind of what we're cultivating as well, is people being able to sit back in the seat of their awareness, in their consciousness, and be able to navigate their life, navigate the contrast without the attachment, without oh, I have to, I don't know, I subscribe to any sort of idea or belief about this thing in my life because of X, Y, and Z. Like, it's kind of just being able to be like, okay, that happened. And now how can I act accordingly?
Yeah.
It was so powerful. I used one of his books. There was no source of entertainment. It was literally stretching, meditating, reading your book and journaling for the 2 weeks that I was there. And his one book that I brought called Polishing the Mirror. It's about essentially learning how to live from your spiritual heart. And I use this thing as an oracle before every one of my ceremonies. So I'd be like, okay, Ram Dass, what are we going to talk about today? Like, what's going to come through in ceremony? And then I would open it and see whatever message. And in my third one, something about the witness came up, and something about ayahuasca as well is like, you can go into it with any sort of desire, expectation. You're getting none of it. Like, you are getting whatever she wants to show you, and it is going to be 180 every single time. Like, nothing
That's
is the same.
hilarious.
It's so funny. So that came up, and I was like, okay, I know that's the message. I'm just gonna let it come through however it comes through. And our third ceremony we made our own ayahuasca for the last ceremony, which was really crazy because you
Very
essentially,
cool.
so ayahuasca is made from DMT leaves and a particular vine that's found in the Amazon. So with the vine, you have to like take this wooden stick essentially and like beat the ayahuasca vine. So, that's an act of violence, but it's also a labor of love. But that being said, you have to be really particular and specific with your intention because you're infusing the medicine with your energy. So
Mm-hmm.
I ended up finding out that someone in our retreat was thinking about her ex-husband when she was beating the ayahuasca vine. So it ended up making a lot of sense because in our third ceremony, everybody had a horrible time except for me. Which was so funny because that was like the other two ceremonies I was really in the medicine.
Mm.
So the third one was kind of like my really beautiful visual. I connected to like spirit animals and crystals and I was a fairy and it was this whole thing. But before I started going deep into my visual, all of a sudden, someone on our retreat started out loud saying, "What's the point of all of this?" And then started calling for my shaman and was like, "Fabian, what are you doing to me?" And started going down this wormhole, which was like very obviously an ego death, but you're not supposed to
Mm.
interact with anybody. You're not supposed to help them because since you're on that sensory overload, like that has the ability to affect everybody's experience. So this person started going off and I had to sit there and I was really like, okay, we are not going to let this affect me. Like, there is no way I'm letting this energy in. So I was holding my crystals and I just kept sitting there and I was like, go behind it, go behind it, go behind it, go behind it. And eventually I felt so seated. It literally almost felt like I had a separate room in my chest where I was able to retreat. And my second ceremony really connected a lot of mental health things. So I kind of realized also that this simultaneously could be the place for peace that you retreat to, but is also the place that you go to when you dissociate. And
Mm.
that for me was pretty interesting. But I was sat in this place where eventually I didn't even hear him anymore. And it was loud. Like it's dead quiet in there and
Yeah.
there's only 7 people. So he was loud. But eventually I got so deep that he sounded like he was just like I was like in a soundproof room and I could barely hear him, which was crazy because he was 2 people down from me. But it just showed me the power of your awareness. And, they say it all the time where attention goes, energy flows. But my attention was really focused on, like, okay, go behind it. And seeing how I literally switched my perception of reality to like no longer incorporate the low key horrors that I was hearing outside of
Yeah.
was so powerful because I was just like, wow, if I can do something as simple but as intense as that, what else can we be creating and we're capable of without even realizing, because when you do that sober and you're not sitting with a medicine, it probably doesn't feel as powerful, but it is. Like, but that's what you're doing
Totally.
without even realizing.
That made me think because I meditate every morning and I was dropping into my meditation a few days ago, 2 days ago, and my boyfriend had near the end of it, my boyfriend had like come in with his dog and like they were making a little bit of like ruckus or whatever, but I was just like sitting in my meditation and at the end of it he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that I was like making all that noise." And I'm like, "That's not the point of the meditation, is to like be in silence all the time. Like it is to strengthen being the observer, not to latch onto that judgment of like, oh, this guy's like wrecking my meditation. Like, this is a moment to learn deeper as
Yeah.
to what meditation really is."
Yeah.
And I've been meditating for a while. In the beginning, I would have to say that and would have annoyed the fuck out of me. But I mean,
So real.
now I'm like, okay, this is just like another way to strengthen it because every single time, like you were saying in your ayahuasca ceremony, that it's creating different neuronal connections. Like it's literally rewiring your brain to not go that judgment route and to become that observer route. And I find that so powerful and also rewarding to know that you're like, your brain is working with you too. It's not always working against you. I know we get like really frustrated with our brains sometimes, but it's because there's so much content around us. And not to mention, how many people in your life just bond over judgment? Like, if you think
Oh,
about the amount of conversations that are being
yep.
had where they, especially like this is being recorded in December where the holidays are coming up. I guarantee you, like I've had like family members that literally just talked about like a judgment-based conversation the entire time. Like that's how they
Yeah, you
bond.
almost don't have anything in
And
common with people that are around you if you're not sitting there talking about someone or shitting on something.
something to
Yeah,
complain about, like, oh
yeah.
my gosh, yeah. And that's where you're like, why is my brain acting like this? It's like, how much content are you consuming or surrounding yourself with that aligns with
And it's just
being
normalized.
unhappy,
Yep.
judging people, getting
Yep.
frustrated and angry? Like, you have to give yourself grace for that. Because you're
Yep.
like you put away some time in your day to be like, I'm going to focus on being the observer, because you know the rest of your day is going to be like surrounded by people that are going to like kind
They're
of
gonna do it for you anyway.
make you have
Like,
to
well, I didn't
practice
have to
that,
join.
you
Yeah.
know? You have to
Yeah.
practice it even deeper.
Yeah, it's been so interesting to just even like go immediately back to work because especially working in a restaurant, it's the second you leave a table and someone says something stupid, it's like, oh, I can't believe this person did blah 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 blah. And I think people that I'm closer with, I felt more comfortable with just being like, hey, listen, love you. I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
But people that I don't really know, especially like, at work, my coworkers, people that are pretty surface level to my experience, I literally have just been walking away. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, and I'm gonna go get some water.
Cool,
Bye.
cool. I
Yeah,
need to go
there's
to the
nothing
bathroom.
to say. I don't want to contribute to it anymore. And it feels like low key pressure. I'm not gonna lie, because it's like you're almost like the oddball out if you're not contributing to that. And it almost feels like this, like, well, are you going to join, or are you going to be the socially awkward one that has like nothing to say or contribute? And it's like,
Yeah, it's
well,
almost like a put down, right? It's like, oh, why are
yeah,
you so happy? Like, what's going on? And then I don't know if you like ever realize this, because we are human. Like, things are gonna annoy us
yeah,
still.
absolutely.
And when you are, some people are like, oh, like you're feeling like this? Like, I thought you were the type of person that didn't. And it can, like, spiritual creators can have such a weird rap where everybody else tends to put them on this pedestal, and you have to remind yourself, like, I'm not allowing myself to be on this pedestal. Like,
Yeah,
I'm maybe spreading the truth with this consciousness that's being increasing, and all these different lessons that I'm having, but it doesn't make me higher of a being compared to somebody else just because they have that warped perspective of you. Yeah, that's like when you mention judgment, it's like it's a really tricky thing in life, because you have the judgments in you that you have learned, and then you also are having to navigate all the judgment around you.
yeah. That's something I've been sitting with, especially this last year has been kind of like the first year I've really been more initiated into the spiritual community, which is like why I moved to California, so that's great. But coming back, I've been sitting with my own judgment, like I mentioned, because I'm seeing so clearly through a lot of these creators that are doing kind of exactly that and are like keeping themselves on this like love and light pedestal. And I don't know, in my heart, the way that I navigate healing, the way that I understand how to help others is by knowing that it's about going with the waves. And yeah, you can love and light and hold the highest vision for everyone and everything, but that's not realistic. And sometimes, you have to be able to adapt and be in those trenches with people and meet them where they are. You can't just say, oh, hold the highest vision for your anger and like send them love. Not at all. Go scream, go punch a pillow, go do like whatever you gotta do.
Exactly.
You have to
Get
be
it
able
out
to
of your
alchemize.
body.
It's spiritual bypassing.
Alchemize it. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's spiritual bypassing, and it's just so unrealistic. And then I feel like it sets up these unrealistic expectations for people that then send them into cycles of shame, because it's like, okay, well, why can't I just let this go? And it's like, babe, there's a million reasons why you can't let this go. It's like, one, you're
Yeah.
spiritually bypassing. Two, you're not allowing your body the opportunity to process the feelings that are stored up inside of you, your ancestral stuff that you got going on. Like, there's, like you said, there's so much coming at you and so much that you're processing that it's not real. And that's kind of been my beef with like the spiritual community, as I've come back, because I've really been seeing like, I don't know if it's the medicine or I'm just like, I see things so much more transparently. And I would like to think, I had a pretty good sense of discernment before this, but I don't know. I don't think those systems, even in general, will really last. I think interesting to see as we enter the age of Aquarius and people are waking up. I think discernment will be a spirit that really wakes up in everybody. So eventually the people that are doing this like hold the highest vision, love and light nonsense will eventually kind of lose their clientele, because I think people will start to realize the truth of what it is, you know, and that it doesn't necessarily work, and then navigate towards the people that are like, let me introduce you to your shadows. Let me show you how to work with them and befriend them and make them, you know, on your team, as opposed to feeling like they're working against you, because they're not. That's They're not at all. It's something I really sat with in my second ceremony too. I pretty much interacted with the spirit of CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And it really just showed me so much. It was a really beautiful experience. I essentially started like going down this wormhole of, so my second ceremony, I noticed my way in through my emotions, and I wrote down in my journal right after that ceremony, actually, emotions are a portal. And I started feeling the grief of the loss of my no-no. And I was like, okay, you know, I didn't realize the medicine was starting to kick in yet. I just started like crying. And then all of a sudden it was hitting me. I was like, oh, this is the way in, like, just go with it. So I relived the day that my grandfather died, and it happened when I was 8 years old, very long time ago. So all of a sudden I like went through the entire day of him passing, like from hearing the announcement at school that I was going home with a friend, being picked up by my mom, feeling that her energy was off, realizing that that's, you know, one of my earliest trauma responses is mirroring someone's energy, right? And is like, okay, well, when someone's off, how do I navigate this? Especially as a kid, where you're like, okay, I'm 8, like I don't know how to process this. And then after I relived his wake, I all of a sudden was like in the mausoleum. And I realized, because I looked at the people sitting in the chairs, and I was like, oh, that's my family members. And I remembered that I forgot his funeral. And that was something that sat with me, because I was like, oh, I didn't even know that I forgot this. And all of a sudden, I then had this really beautiful visual of like lifting up floorboards, like wooden planks in my brain. And I took a flashlight and I went like this and blew. And the dust that was coming up was all of my memories. And then I started going down this wormhole of like, this is the CPTSD. And it was just this inner knowing of like, especially, you know, with CPTSD, a symptom is that your memory is gone, because your amygdala, the part of your brain that's responsible for your memory, literally shrinks because of trauma. So being in a space as well where that has been weaponized against me, to have this knowing in my heart and this like literal cellular change of these parts of you were never forgotten, they were just really deeply hidden. It sounds so simple, but it's just not, especially, you know, in situations where you feel like you lost yourself, you know, you're like, why can't I remember these specific things? Or just, again, even realizing that I started losing my memory when I was 8 years old. So I was just like, that's really crazy to have that come back to you. And I kind of just sat there as well, then hugging myself after this awareness settled in, because I realized my body felt safe enough to release those memories. And that was something that was so big, because I was just like, it connected that every single thing that we do, stretching, drinking enough water, sleeping enough, saying no to plans you don't want to go to, the people that you're surrounded by, the job that you work, like every single thing allowed me to be in that moment. Sorry, it makes me emotional. But
don't apologize.
I just sat there and I was like, you feel safe enough to release that. Like, that is so incredible. And it was literally a soul retrieval. And that's something that shamanic healing practices like literally offer. So I went into this kind of with like, what's my offering? And I didn't get the like, here's your business plan. But I got the why. I got that feeling of like, this is what I want to bring to people. Like, I literally felt like I reclaimed my power in those moments, because again, like the lack of memory had been weaponized against me for so long. So I was just like, wow, this is what it means to like retrieve that part of my soul. Like, how do you explain to somebody I got my memory back? You know, like it was so powerful.
Yeah, I've had my sister is somebody in my life who has struggled with that, where she has zero memory of childhood, really. And I have a little bit more, but I think it's because I was the older sister, hypervigilant, and I remember too much at some points. And then there's moments where I'm like, oh, I don't remember that at all. So it's very interesting to how your brain stores information.
Because it's trying to
And
protect you.
yeah, it tries to protect you. And I had learned a few years ago, I think like 4 years ago, about like just getting into how trauma is stored in your body and how important it is to let yourself revisit memories when you feel safe, like you said, to let it out. And a couple of years ago, I went through a situation with like sexual harassment nearby where I lived. And it was a reoccurring thing as like a woman over sexualized, and she was very young. I mean, like, I'm curvier, got bigger boobs, have been sexualized since even before I knew what was happening. Pairing with, I was raised Catholic, so taught I'm like automatically a sinner.
It's like your fault somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were so many problems I had around, and it's tying to this, like I was saying, the feminine rage, where I'm like, I hear you, like I hear your where you are, and something, the more recent one, I knew because of my friend who told me this, how trauma stores in your body. For weeks and weeks, I like sat down and I did this meditation that Iris Daly has on YouTube about dealing with trauma. And I sat there and I put myself through re-seeing it over and over and over again until I no longer felt
The weight of it.
ashamed of
Yeah.
myself, afraid of men. Like I went through a year where I was absolutely terrified of men. Where like I could, and it's what's surprising is people are like,
You're like,
you're a third degree black belt. How are you afraid of men? You know, like you know how to defend yourself. And it's like I don't think it's just my own. I think if anything, what I was feeling was deeper than just me. Like I was feeling for all women who went through what I went through and are afraid of men again. So like I need to sit with myself, because if I don't do that, like you were mentioning, the dissociation, the memory blocks, I know that I want to like expand my life with like having a space for women. I know I can't do that if I didn't do that for myself.
yeah.
And yeah, it was really like a proud moment for me to be like, I gave nobody in my life other than me, just me, gave myself like a safe space to just feel what I was feeling. And
And you don't even really realize
yeah.
like the depths of it because it seems, you kind of realize that, okay, it reminds me of that image where it's like an iceberg and like you see the tip of it and it's like, you feel this much, but it's really this deep.
Oh, it's like so
And
deep. And you don't
yeah,
even, yeah, you don't
yeah, it's like
know that
in
it's
the
in your
cellular
body like that.
structure of your body. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You
it's like,
don't,
it was
yeah.
so crazy
Do
to
you ever
feel
feel
that
like
all come up.
pain in certain parts of your body? Like I know when I'm
Absolutely.
reaching like
Yeah.
a huge, huge point in like my like I struggle with depression and anxiety. And when I get into like a big depression episode, I know that my heart is so blocked because my wrists and hands start to ache.
Yeah.
And there's like a connection between like your wrists and your heart. And
Yeah.
like it will like literally hurt. I see it less of like what's wrong with me or like what's happening to me. Like how can I help
Yeah.
her? How
Yeah,
can
your
I
body is
help
the
this
biggest messenger. It's like,
body?
hello, we're trying to show you something, but we're not. And this ties into something so much larger because we're not taught that our bodies are messengers. We're not taught how to self-heal. We're not taught all of these things. Then you have to ask why, because if people really knew their power, then certain systems at play wouldn't be able to exist. For example, big
Totally.
pharma,
Matrix would be
that's like
broken.
capitalizing off of literally, that's capitalizing off of depression and anxiety and all those things and are trying to keep people asleep. And that's also why like it's so beautiful for the path that we're on because we're literally liberating people from their own prison cells. Like we're helping you like, listen, you built the cage and also you have the key because you built the cage.
Yep.
So it's just a
Exactly.
process of remembering all of that, but you really don't realize like how deep it goes. And that's something that So I've sat with Combo, which is a frog secretion. It's frog poison that you administer through small burn holes on your skin. I'm gonna sit with it for the third time on Tuesday. I'm so excited. But that has really like it puts you in your body, and it works through your lymphatic system. But when you sit with it, you literally feel it scan your body. And the whole purpose of it is essentially to purge, but it goes into wherever it needs to and purges those stored emotions, because like we just said, the body keeps score, so the
Yeah.
parts of you that don't consciously realize, oh, my hatred is stored in my kidneys, my sadness is stored in my stomach, whatever is wherever, you feel, again, you might not be making the connection as to why, but you feel wherever it's at, and then you release. And it's just the most liberating experience, because you have particular thoughts as you're purging that are kind of like, oh, this is what's coming up for you. This is the connection between X, Y, and Z. So if you're able enough to kind of sit in the observer and pay attention to the thoughts that are coming up as this purging is happening, you realize like what's coming from where and what needs to be released. And it's really incredible medicine, and is something that, I think it's so great, because these medicines are becoming more accepted to be talked about, and the consciousness of these medicines is coming through to the collective at this time for a really particular reason, at a really particular time, where more so it would have been taboo X amount of years ago. That I think it's really incredible, because it's like, okay, yeah, as people are awakening, as consciousness is raising, people are starting to realize things like, my body is trying to tell me something, so how can I learn how to better communicate with it? Okay, well, now the medicine is making itself known, and people are learning about Combo and what the hell that is, and how we can use it, and how this has been around for thousands of years, and reconnect to our roots, essentially, of like self-healing and the power that we have, and the connection that we have with the universe, and how the earth is provided everything for us to be able to do all of this ourselves, and like the wisdom that our ancestors knew that we lost over time. It's such a
Yes.
beautiful thing to be able to retrieve those pieces of you. And like you said, it's the most empowering thing to know, I did this. Like I
Yeah.
saved myself, especially in a society that like breeds like, your Prince Charming will come, your significant other will change your life, and blah 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 blah. Like none of that will happen if you don't do it yourself first.
Girl, yeah, that was something I had a misconception of when I was young. And it was such a powerful realization for me. But I guess, like, really what I would like to get into is like when you came back from your trip, because it must be, I know after just like regular trips, it can be so odd of an adjustment where you're like, oh, I mean, like, I'm excited to come back, but like, why am I back? I kind
Yep.
of just don't want to be here.
So one, when I came back instantly, I was like, people are not supposed to have this much access to us at any given time with technology. Like it made me sick to just turn on my cell phone and get all these messages, and just people already asking me for things, and not even big things, literally just like, hey, did you see my email? And it's like, girl, like give me a minute. It connected so many dots for me on how slow we're actually supposed to be living. Like when I was in the jungle, time almost ceased to exist, and it moved so
Yeah.
slow. And I just, I would look, whenever I saw the clock, it would be like maybe 5 minutes later, and it felt like an hour. Like it was so insane how
Yeah.
slow time moved, and feeling the pressure of coming back to a really fast moving society. I feel like that's very much a Western thing, but coming back to this, like, be productive, be doing everything at every given time, or like, it's based in a lot of capitalist mindset of equating productivity with success, and feeling like you're not doing enough if you're not being productive to certain degrees. So I feel like that's kind of the biggest thing I've been unlearning. Someone recently said to me, to move slow is to move smooth, and to move smooth is to move fast.
Quick interruption. I just wanted to let you guys know that I have my guide out for aligning your life with the seasons. I think it's perfect around this clip where Rachel's explaining how it's so important to go slow and how that can really launch you forward towards more growth than you ever would have realized. A lot of us are in this really quick, fast-paced lifestyle, in the rat race, as we like to say, and it's not as beneficial as we may think it is. Like we really are not seeing the growth and success because we're getting into these cycles of burnout and not really pushing through that and seeing true growth. The guide that I came out with specifically goes into a full year and how you can use the energy of the seasons, winter, autumn, spring, summer efficiently so that your goals will keep getting pushed forward and you're not going to experience burnout. Make sure to get this guide. You can share it with a friend and try it together, and let's make 2025 our best year yet.
And that really stuck with me because in my third ceremony, it was really it was all about animals. It was the most incredible thing ever. But I had an experience with the cheetah, and in my integration talk with my shaman, I was like, I feel like I'm supposed to go home and just finally go after all the things that I've been sitting on. And he was like, sit with that a little longer. And I was like, okay. And, I felt, okay. I noticed my ego come up and I was like, how are you going to tell me what I just said was wrong about my own experience? I'm getting my own message, And when I came back, I kind of got a reflection of someone moving too fast after the medicine. And I was just immediately got the no, thank you for showing me that, because that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be letting the medicine really integrate, because the medicine is obviously really important when you're sitting with it, but it might be even more important afterwards, because this is the time frame where you get to address all of the ways of being, thinking, behaving, believing that were not working for you before. And I said a little bit earlier, the ways that I was that are resurfacing feel more insufferable now, and I'm more able to realize what they are and therefore reprogram them and come at them with a different perspective. And I've been unlearning that sense of needing to be productive by doing, constantly doing. And, like I mentioned, I'm a Capricorn. I naturally want to just do because that comes to me to be a hard worker. So, and this is why we're born with particular astrology, so that we can learn specific lessons, because it's you have that element of doing, but also how do you do that without burning out? How can that be consistent? How can you keep going and not crash out? So I realized, the medicine of cheetah, yes, they go fast, but how fast do they go and for how long? When a cheetah goes fast, they're going 70 miles per hour for about 30 seconds. So it's learning when to exercise that speed, that agility, that taking that inspired action. And in the meantime, the 80% of the time, learning how to rest and recuperate and balance and moving slow so that I can move faster, because constantly moving fast with that capitalist bred mindset doesn't do anything besides lead you to an absolute crash out and burnout. And I've been through so many different stages of my life where the things that have made me happy turned into the things that then caused me stress. And I've just realized that before I left, because I really want to be self-employed and I want to break out of this matrix, and I feel like I'm almost there, so the excitement makes me want to do more. I was putting so much pressure on myself to just produce to the point that it turned into, gotta record a YouTube video today. Gotta do this, gotta do that. And it wasn't making me as happy as it normally does. So when I've had the time to slow down and reintegrate and, just look at things that I've recorded of me playing in the river, it's oh, I love making little edits. And I'm reconnecting with these passions that I realize oh, when I move slow, I produce better. And when I produce better, because I'm more and more alignment, that will create that faster motion. It's almost like the sensation of ice skating. It's when there's a lot of slush on the ice, you're not moving as smooth, you're not moving as fast, you're probably going to fall a few times. But when the Zamboni comes and goes and cleans all the ice, boom, you're going 1,000 miles per hour and it's smooth sailing.
Exactly. That makes me think what I like to remind myself of, because burnout, overworking, me. Totally me.
Yep.
It's why I took such a huge break or like dislike for school after I graduated because I realized I overdid it. Like really overdid it. Didn't even spend those 4 years enjoying my life and the experiences that were around me. I just was pulling all-nighters, grinding, got sick way too many times, and what I like to remind myself now, because right after school, I went into the Twenties Detox and I, like yourself, reached moments of burnout. Why am I doing this? Does this even align with me anymore? And it took moments of rest for me to be like, this does align with me, but you can't do everything and you're leading with the wrong thing. So I heard this podcast episode that Jay Shetty put out years and years ago, and he said, like, go with the pace of love. And that, like, I felt that full body where I asked myself when I noticed that I haven't been as mindful, how have I been going with the pace of love? Because the pace of love doesn't rush. Like, she just does what needs to be done. And now I have structure, yes, but I very much allow an equal amount of rest for my body, for my mind, because those who come back from an amazing trip like what you went through, or even a quick vacation, those are the moments where you feel so much more inspired too, because you literally have replenished all your energy, your creative energy, life energy, by just being instead of
Yeah.
doing, right?
Yeah. You create
So
this
I
like buffer
try and
space.
sprinkle being,
Yeah.
try and sprinkle some being in my life where it doesn't need to be for anything productive.
Exactly. Yeah. And the contradiction of that almost, where it's like by not being productive, all of a sudden you get all these ideas on how to be productive.
I know,
It's
I
literally
know.
good, and then you can't wait, and you're like, oh my God, let me go at it.
But it is really
It's so
funny how
funny.
that can happen. Because, like, all of our best ideas are not like when we're actually doing it. It's like when we're in the shower, or like when we're going for a walk, or maybe even talking with a friend. That's when the ideas come, right? So, coming back full circle, literally, to what you're saying, it is so like connected, the masculine, the feminine, in that sense,
Yeah.
where you can't have one without the other. If you
Yeah.
want to create something that's sustainable and that aligns with you, and that's pretty much like good content. Like, you can
Yeah.
tell when somebody just, you probably
It's
slapped on a
wisdom.
ton of chat GBT and pumped out as much content as they possibly could just to go viral. But then there's other people who create very quality content, and it shows for, people like us, other people who are on that wavelength.
Yeah, absolutely. My something that my shaman shared with me, because towards the end of our retreat, it was so funny. He basically told me to shut the fuck up. Kidding. He didn't say that, but he basically did. He was like, he just looked at me. He was like, "Do people tell you talk really fast?" And I was like, because that's been something that people have said to me my entire life. And the way that I processed it was like, not my fault your brain can't process that fast. Keep up.
Yeah,
Like, you
exactly.
know? But he essentially told me, shared the insight with me. And, it definitely triggered me. And I kind of sat and like, it bothered me for a while. And I went back into my little casita and I sat with it and I was like, why does this bother me so much? And I realized it was an invitation to expand and create that buffer space between me and whatever it is I'm experiencing. And it's the same thing with like creating that buffer space between your stuff that you're trying to do and being able to relax, like being able to create that distance so that you don't get too attached to whatever it is. Because when you create that buffer space with whatever it is, a person, place, thing, belief, what have you, the clarity comes. So you're kind
Yeah.
of able to see things more clearly because you removed yourself from the attachment to all of it. And that was a really good reflection, because I feel like that really just kind of helped me put me in my place a little bit, where it was like, okay, especially like I think it's like 80% of America is diagnosed with ADHD or ADD. Like we're
Oh
constantly
yeah.
ready to go. Like we're ready
Yeah.
to answer something before someone even is done speaking. Like you say the first three words, I know what you're about to say to finish your
Oh
sentence.
yeah,
You know, so
exactly.
it's
Hmm.
like we're constantly ready to go. So creating that buffer space, it almost just is like an invitation for spirit to come in, and it's like you, and then you're giving space to spirit to be able to show you, work through you, talk to you, and just help you navigate whatever it is you're currently facing, which is so beautiful because it's just like, okay, yeah, we're in this together. It's like it goes from
Exactly.
me to us. And then you realize
Yes.
us is me, and then us is one, and then the whole nonsense of all of that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting that you brought that up because until I was dating my boyfriend, I never realized that I did this, but my mom taught me this. Like, I definitely got the trait from her where she talks, and my dad is the listener. My sister's the listener. And then I think I've adopted more of her like talking. But I think that when I notice these people who are much more of the listeners than the talkers, my like inability to stop talking is so insane.
Yeah.
And my
And it could be
boyfriend's like,
triggered.
yeah, and like it was, like it definitely was, and it made me think about like, oh, like I definitely was taught this from my mom, who
Yeah.
love her, but she is like she usually is actually the life of the party,
Yeah.
because of her ability to connect with everyone, but
Yeah.
she also loves to talk, and we all have our things to work on. And my dad's like way almost too good of a listener. Like put a
Yeah.
few words in there, and like maybe there would have been a bit of a balance.
Yeah.
But I think also because I had a parent that was like that, where it was difficult to get words in, that's why I tend to like jump on these opportunities that allow me to have that space. And I don't realize that I might be like talking and talking and talking and talking. Now I'm like, after that awareness, I'm finding a better balance and like really valuing listening over talking all the time. But it is it is interesting. And yes, it's also triggering because how we don't like to be like painted in a light that doesn't seem
It seems like
like
negative, but it's not.
great. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It seems negative because like we don't want to have that trait, or like we didn't like that wasn't even a trait that we might have realized about ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel you with that. Definitely.
Yeah, it's so interesting
Yeah.
because my shaman essentially shared like, whether I speak like this or whether I speak like this, the message is still going to come out. So it's like people are still going to listen. So be at the rate of which more people have the ability to process. And that just, because he essentially was telling me, especially someone that wants to be a healer, someone that wants to talk to people, have a podcast, do a path like this, like you need to be able to, one, grab as much attention as you can. And you're already kind of narrowing out a large group of people by being the talker, or by being the person that's like coming with this rapid fire energy. But also, he shared with me, and this one kind of clocked me as well. He was like, if you want to be a healer, you can't energetically come at someone 1,000 miles per hour. Like, they're already probably doing that in their head. So you have to be the one to ground them and bring them down here. And that for me was
That's
really
so true.
right. Because he was like, they have to reflect, they have to mirror your energy. You can't be mirroring theirs by like continuously going. And I was like, all right. You made some points with that one. Heard.
True. Yeah,
Heard. I was like, okay.
exactly. You also put something on your story recently that I was like, we have to talk about this. It's like one of the probably the biggest learnings that all of us need to realize. And you were saying after this trip, like you've become a new version, right? But then you said, but here's the real part of it is I'm just finding this like I'm finding my truth. I'm finding who I really am. And yeah, like, could you talk about that a little bit? Because I know a lot of people who are possibly on like a personal growth journey or spiritual journey can feel that, where they've had these types of ego deaths or like moments of clarity where they are switching up either the way that they're presenting themselves or their interest, and they're like, this feels like me, whereas everybody else is saying like, wow, you're like such a different person, like you're such a new person.
Yeah.
But internally I'm like, but I feel more like Bianca, like I feel more
Yeah.
like little
Well,
B
I've
that was
always
running
been
around when she was 3 years old, like.
a-
And
yeah.
yeah, or even in a deeper way.
Yeah, it's so, essentially, like I mentioned earlier, we know who we are at a soul level, and then we come to earth to forget in order to remember. And the ways that we forget are, we have our own individual life experiences and the traumatic stuff that we endure, and then we have things like school and things that are
Yeah.
literally conditioning us to be certain ways, to believe certain things, religion being one of the biggest ones. I grew up going to Catholic school, so it's like you're taught that this is what exists, this is what you should believe in, this is good, this is bad, this is whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we're conditioned since we're out of the womb. Even just like, if you had a parent that didn't allow you to cry as a kid and was like, you need to stop doing that, like you're conditioned to be a particular way and you're molded into this being. And to the fault of no one, right? Because I think a lot of things as well as like that I see is, and something I've navigated as well, is kind of blaming people or institutions in your life for that. And, valid, rightfully so. When you say I've been conditioned, there are things that have conditioned you. But again, removing yourself from that attachment and realizing like it's all a part of the bigger picture to help, or to help, like almost to force you to forget, so that you can have the opportunity to reclaim your power. So I think that when they go hand in hand, like you feel like a new person, but it's only because you're tapping into who you were before all of that conditioning. And there's a reason that people love babies and kids so much, and it's because they're rooted in the truth of their spirit. Like we are all of our inner child. Like we are those
Yeah.
beings. We are that being of light that is sat in unconditional love, that is sat in bringing light and peace, and wants to giggle all the time and just like questions the world in this beautiful naive way and just wants to explore. Oh, it makes me so
Mm-hmm.
emotional. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the truth of who we are. So it's like when you start to peel back the onion layers of all of this conditioning, it's like you almost get these little glimmers of light where you're like, oh my God, there I am. Like that feels good because that's my true frequency. That's what I resonate with. That's who I really am. So
Mm-hmm.
they go hand in hand again. Like you feel like a new person, but really you're just becoming more of who you've always been before society, before institutions, before all of these patterns, programmings, and belief systems kind of taught you who you were. You are remembering who you are and tapping back
Remembering.
into that inner child spirit of like, oh yeah, this is me. This is like, I feel like a little kid. And I think that's something that's commonly talked about with people that are older, that are like, age is just a number, like I've always felt like a kid. Like, as I get older, I feel younger, and there's a truth to that. And I honestly think too, like just as we get older as beings, whether you're conscious or spiritual or not, I think it's something that people tap into without even really realizing. And I don't know if it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of that. I think it also works kind of hand in hand with fear of our time being limited here. I feel like kind of as you get
Mm-hmm.
older, people kind of just process the shit that doesn't matter. Like we kind of get tired of like having to defend ourselves, having to fight for a relationship, having to do like X, Y, and Z, having to work at a job that doesn't make us happy. Like, why do you think people have midlife crises? It's
Yeah,
like
the quarter
they're
life
realizing
crisis
like the
too,
shit that
right?
has
Like,
never worked for them, and it's like they don't want to do
mm-hmm.
it anymore. So, to some people, what degree they wake up is whatever, but it's an innate knowing in all of us that call home to return back to ourselves. And that's one of Ram Dass's like biggest sayings is like we're all just walking each other home. And that's
Mm.
such a beautiful message
Oh,
that
I
gets
love that. I love
um,
that.
just because I want to, I carry that with my own personal mission of like, I want to help you remember who you are. But even the people that don't realize what they're doing or how they're being led, like are also being walked home and are also helping walk other people home. But yeah, it's that innate calling to like come back home to who you are, which is that inner child spirit, which is that like, I want to have fun with life and I'm here to play and create and paint on my walls and do whatever the hell I want to do. Like go ice skating in the middle of LA in July because I can, like, because I have free
Exactly.
will, because I can do whatever I want. So yeah, that's been a really kind of beautiful unraveling process. And it's been something too that just like it shows energetically, you know, like the more you become yourself, I think the more you start glowing from like literally the inside out, and the more people notice, but
Yeah.
also the more you become the space that allows other people to do the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's like instead of
Exactly.
talking about the medicine, you are the medicine. And that space that you're holding just by being you, people like energy doesn't lie. People feel that call to
No.
then be like, oh, for some reason I can tell this person my entire life story. Or for some reason I can like act like a total goofball in front of them. I don't
Yeah.
know why, but I just feel more comfortable. And that's it's kind of the point of all of it, you know? So it's like again,
Yeah.
one ripple makes a giant wave in terms of like when you heal yourself, you're healing the entire collective. I
Oh,
one thing I really love, it's quote I saw on like a little tiny like sidewalk billboard type of thing somewhere once, but it said, if small people in small places do small things, then big change is created.
totally. I totally resonate with that. I had a episode years ago with my sister. We were talking about the climate crisis and climate anxiety that was coming for a lot of people.
me,
And
me being people.
yeah, she studied in environmental geography. My best friend was also graduated in environmental science, and the fear that they had coming out of that was so strong. And I was like, let's just sit down and talk about it, because the more that you can share and not be so much of a doomer, like let's think
Yeah.
about like the positives, like there's already so many doomers and deniers. I say this, doomers and deniers are on the same frequency.
Very much.
And the people that are thinking abundantly of like the possibilities that we have and sharing that. And I tied it at the very end being like, if I can help, if I can just, I know that I have this like feeling inside of me to share and like help people heal and help people want to be the best versions of themselves, like being basically like as content in themselves as possible and in life, that will spread like an intense domino effect. So that's what I want. Like that's where I measure my fulfillment in life, not like how much of an impact can I do as one person, how much of an impact can I do on one person who can share it with their best friend, and then their best friend shares it with their best friend, and it keeps going. And like you are doing such an amazing job with that, Rachel. Like this message today like makes me so emotional and like
Me too, girl.
feels so
I'm like not
seen.
downstairs.
I love it though. Like, I'm so glad you felt safe enough to like share that and like be open with that, because it's so powerful and you are the medicine here. Like, you are the medicine. I feel it. Like, you have so much wisdom inside of you, and people see it. Like, people resonate with it, and more resonating with it. And yeah, I want to thank you so much for coming on here, because like I was really looking forward to like having you on here and like talking with you about everything like you know so much, and it's incredible, and like I just cannot wait for you to like grow and like see you grow in what you're creating and what you're going to be sharing, because it's like big. It's more than just like a get ready with me on TikTok and like all these fashion things. Like
Of
I
course.
I put my energy into those are great, like satisfying videos.
Yeah.
But um I've been really like working on putting my energy into energy, but also into content that I want to consume that is who I would like to be, how I would like to live my life. And you are like definitely one of like the top people. And like, I know that for so many people feel the same way. So I want to thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank
Like,
you for please even like having this platform, like the work that you do as well. Oh my God, my mascara's running. I look like a raccoon. Um, just the work that you do by like having these conversations that are so important are creating that ripple effect too. Like something I've realized within my own work too is like you never know who's listening and you never know who's
yeah.
tapping in. And I feel like sometimes like when you are creating these spaces, it kind of feels like you're talking into a void and you're like, I'm doing this for myself and others, but like who's listening? And it's like you never know the impact of the impact that your work is really having. So
Yeah.
I hope that like you let yourself sit with that too, because like I promise you, you are offering tons of change to people, and every conversation that you have is creating monumental change in people. And I've said it to you a million times too, like the things that you create, I'm constantly inspired and I'm constantly like, I can do this and I can do this and I want to do this and I like that she's doing this. Like
Yeah.
you're completely so inspiring. And it's also like such, like I see you as someone, especially like someone that's, you know, your gift through this is speech, is talking, is platform. And it's almost like you are the middleman between spirit and the messages that are coming through. We're all middlemen in our own way, but like your platform is the middleman. And
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
is so incredible to be able to bring that into earth and be like, here's all of the available messages for you, by the way, in case you want to see blah blah blah,
Yeah.
go to this episode. If you want to go to this, go to this. And it's so incredible because
Yeah.
it offers like such a diversity of conversation and a
Yeah.
diversity of potential seeds that you're planting in people's brain, and whoever finds you, whatever message they find is like exactly what they need. And I feel like avenues like this are almost like little oracles. Like how many times have you randomly listened to a podcast that you're just like, okay, I really needed to hear that at this
Yeah. Oh
time.
my goodness.
So it's like you are
Totally.
also that divinity in people. So I
Oh,
really hope that you feel that.
I thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. I'm so glad that we're here to just like see each other and like share love with one another, because like the content world can be such a harsh place, can be such a
Very.
competitive area. And to slow down, like we were talking about here, and just like really cheering other creators on will, I found that also helps me be more brave in like the messages I want to share and like what I would like to do, and think less productivity wise or like efficiency or
Yeah.
success and money. Like I do feel like I just have these messages inside of me and this is how I can share it and this is what I can do, and however impact and like whoever needs to listen to it can listen to it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's your superpower, girl.
You too. Oh my goodness. Like first of all, I followed every single word and thing you said today. So you weren't speaking too fast for me. Um,
Too.
but yeah, I'm beyond excited for people to listen to this. Like
Yes, me too.
I'm not to just say for women, but I know that women are going to get little sprinkles of like feeling seen in this moment and like us feeling emotional and talking about real shit. Yeah, let's fake it till we make it. Like I'm going to hype
Yeah,
myself
super
up
great,
even
but
if I
also
don't
like
feel
let's
that.
face reality.
But at the same time, like I'm not going to shy away from the pain that we do experience, because that will fuel shame. Like I want to create a space where, and you do the same thing. Like you did it this whole time, where like you actually unlocked things in me where I didn't even remember it. And like it is amazing when you talk about something, like you were talking about the unlocking of your memory and like coming back to like who you are. Like I had memory that was unlocked when you were saying that, and like I thought about like little Bianca, like so in love with life. And like when this I had recent snowfall and
Oh,
I went outside,
amazing.
and I literally like smiling ear to ear, being like, I'm so excited,
It's
and like
here.
I wish I could feel like this every day, like this
Yeah.
like joy and for life.
Yeah.
But
And that's
yeah,
the greatest part is like we literally can. We literally can. We just gotta
literally can,
empty the
the
vessel
perspective.
to sit
Yep.
in that space. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks so much, Rachel, for coming on. I I'm so excited for all the things you're creating. And last but not least, like, why don't you share where people can follow you? You have a YouTube, you have quite a few different social media platforms. So go ahead and share that before we close off.
Tell me you're trying to be a jack of all trades without telling me you're trying to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Okay, so my Instagram is I am Rachael Mrocka, RachaelMrocka, in case you need to spell it. My YouTube is Rising with Rachel, and I do have available episodes. However, I'm right now rebranding, but my podcast is available to listen to. It's Time to Wake Up. That's available on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. And yeah, my TikTok is the same, Rising with Rachel, but we're working towards YouTube and podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Amazing.
So much.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I hope you felt something from that. Like, my heart just feels like it's exploding. Like, it's just like so open and like, I feel so seen. I'm so happy that we've connected, and I hope you all have an amazing week. I'm sure Rachel and I are just sending so much love to you. And I'll see you guys next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I really appreciated you being here. I hope this episode resonated with you. Make sure to go follow Rachel in all of her platforms so that you can be up to date with more of the things she's sharing. She shares so many insightful tips in astrology to help guide you to planning your life, your days, your weeks, and also to experience healing. She's an amazing friend of mine. I am so blessed to have had her on here and share the amazing lesson she's experienced through trying plant medicine and also overcoming a lot of shit that we all deal with, judgment, grief, shame, and really pushing through that, alchemizing it, and being this like guider of light, So if you guys really liked this episode about spirituality, you're also going to love the episode I did last year with my friend Julia Goose. She is incredible. She touches on the divine feminine, how to overcome your fears and experience true liberation. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, make sure to listen to that episode next. I appreciate you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next week.